Emily's screams echoed down the sterile hospital corridor, sharp and desperate, each one laced with the raw panic of labor and the crushing weight of abandonment. Two nurses flanked her on either side of the stretcher, their hands firm on the rails, their voices calm but urgent. "You're doing great, Emily. Just breathe. We're almost there." But she barely heard them. Her vision blurred with pain and tears, and every breath felt like it was being clawed out of her chest. Her fingers gripped the white hospital sheet with trembling force, knuckles pale, sweat running down her temples as the next contraction ripped through her. "Where's the father?" one of the nurses asked gently, looking around. Emily shook her head, trying to speak through the searing pain. "He's not here," she managed to gasp, biting down hard to stifle another scream. Her face twisted with agony, but there was something deeper in her eyes. Betrayal, fear, and disbelief that she was doing this alone. Miles away, under the sun-drenched skies of the West Hill Golf Club, Daniel Thompson stood on the green, holding a 9-iron and chuckling with a group of wealthy friends. Champagne sparkled in their glasses. Someone slapped Daniel on the back. "Man, you're glowing, new dad energy already," another friend joked. Daniel smirked, raising his glass. "She's not due till next week," he said dismissively. "Plenty of time for a few swings." His phone buzzed in his pocket, but he ignored it. He wasn't going to let anything ruin this weekend. Not even his wife going into labor. Back at the hospital, the mood shifted as soon as the lab technician stepped into the delivery room hallway, holding a clipboard and looking visibly unsettled. He leaned in close to one of the nurses, whispering something too softly for Emily to hear. The nurse's eyes widened slightly. She nodded, then hurried away, shoes squeaking on the polished floors. Moments later, Dr. Nathan Collins arrived, his brows furrowed. He looked at the chart, then at Emily, then at the nurse. "Something's not adding up," he said in a low voice. "Run the compatibility test again." In the chaos of birth, something unusual had shown up in the blood work. Something that would change everything. 2 years earlier, the lights in the newly purchased townhouse glowed golden, casting a cozy hue over the gathering of friends, family, and colleagues who had come to celebrate Emily and Daniel's new beginning. Laughter filled the air, clinking glasses sang soft harmonies, and the scent of lavender candles mingled with hors d'oeuvres and fresh paint. Emily moved from guest to guest with a grace that made her glow, her hand never straying far from Daniel's. She wore a pale blue dress that complemented the warmth in her cheeks and the joy in her eyes. Everything about her screamed happiness, hopeful, full-hearted love. She held Daniel's hand tightly when introducing him to her coworkers and giggled when he leaned over to whisper playful jokes in her ear. Daniel, ever the charming host, worked the room with ease. He was handsome, magnetic, the kind of man who turned heads effortlessly. He refilled wine glasses, cracked jokes that made everyone roar with laughter, and complimented the women in ways that made them blush but didn't cross the line. To everyone watching, they were a picture of a perfect couple, a love story just getting started. Guests complimented their taste in decor, muted grays, soft greens, stylish furniture. The couple's framed wedding photo was placed prominently above the fireplace, and Emily had arranged a photo wall documenting their holidays, anniversaries, and silly moments. Daniel smiled for every picture taken that night, kissed Emily's forehead in full view of their friends, and even held her from behind while she cut the cake shaped like a little house. To new beginnings, he toasted, eyes sparkling. People clapped, and Emily beamed as she rested her head against his shoulder. But beneath the charm and sparkle was a carefully managed performance. Daniel wasn't basking in love, he was bathing in control. Later that night, after the last guest had left and the laughter had faded into soft silence, Emily fell asleep curled up beside him on the couch, her head on his chest and a blanket draped over both of them. The television murmured in the background, but Daniel wasn't watching. His eyes were on his phone. He slowly eased her head off his chest and stood up, walking silently to the kitchen. There, in the glow of the refrigerator light, he unlocked his phone with a practiced swipe and opened a hidden message thread under the name Tony, work. He typed quickly, fingers tapping with quiet urgency, "Same room as always?" The message was marked delivered. A moment later, a reply appeared, "Keys waiting." Midnight. He looked back toward the living room where Emily lay sleeping peacefully, completely unaware that her picture-perfect marriage had hairline fractures already forming. Daniel placed the phone face down on the counter, exhaled, and took a long sip from the wine bottle. The smile he wore all night was gone. What remained was something colder, calculating. And in that silence, the perfectly painted lie had begun to chip. It was a crisp autumn evening, the kind that made the air feel fresher and the skies seem clearer. Emily had been nervously rehearsing her words all day, her fingers grazing over the small white gift box she'd placed on the dining table. Inside was a pair of tiny white baby booties and a note that read, "Coming soon, Baby Thompson, April 2025. She'd even added a miniature plastic pacifier for fun. Her heart beat with anxious excitement as she heard Daniel's keys turn in the front door. "Hey, babe," he called, tossing his coat over the chair. "What's all this?" His eyes scanned the table before locking onto hers. Emily couldn't help but smile. "I have a surprise," she said, practically glowing. She handed him the box with both hands, biting her lip as he opened it. Daniel froze. His eyes stared at the booties for a moment too long, and when he finally looked up, his smile seemed slightly delayed. "Wow," he said slowly. You're pregnant?" She nodded, her eyes misty. "Yes. I found out this morning. I wanted to tell you in a special way." Daniel forced a grin, pulling her into a quick embrace. "That's amazing," he said, but his voice wavered just enough to betray him. Emily didn't seem to notice, her joy radiating like sunlight. She rambled on about nursery colors, names she'd been considering, and her plans to book the first ultrasound. "It's early, but I wanted to share it with you before anyone else," she added, squeezing his hand. "We're going to be a family, Daniel." He nodded, saying all the right things. But the moment she turned to fetch her phone from the kitchen to call her sister, Daniel's face changed. His jaw clenched. He exhaled sharply and reached for the wine cabinet. He poured himself a glass, then another, muttering under his breath, "Why now?" He took a long sip, his eyes unfocused. When Emily returned, he smiled again, too widely. "Let's celebrate," he said, raising his glass. She toasted with him, thrilled to be starting this chapter. But later that night, as she lay asleep with a hand gently resting over her belly, Daniel stood by the window, staring out into the darkness. The weight of fatherhood pressed heavily against his chest. He picked up his phone, typed out a message, and stared at it for a moment before hitting send. "You awake?" A reply came instantly, "Always for you." He slipped on a jacket and scribbled a note, "Went out for air. Be back soon." He left it on the nightstand and crept out of the house. The cold wind bit at his skin as he climbed into his car, but it didn't stop him. Minutes later, he was in a familiar part of town, knocking on a familiar door. Amanda answered in a silk robe, smiling as if she'd been expecting him all along. Without a word, he stepped inside. As the door closed behind him, so did the illusion of loyalty. While his wife dreamed of cribs and lullabies, Daniel chased something entirely different. Chloe had known Emily since university, the kind of friendship built on sleepless study nights, shared secrets, and years of unwavering loyalty. As a nurse, Chloe had seen enough human behavior to know when something felt off, and lately, Daniel was setting off every alarm in her gut. It wasn't just that he seemed distant during dinner parties or the way he avoided conversations about the baby, it was the small things. He was always checking his phone when Emily wasn't looking, disappearing for quick errands that took hours, and brushing off Emily's worries with a too slick smile. Chloe didn't want to interfere, but the pieces weren't sitting right. She loved Emily like a sister, and she refused to stand by while something suspicious grew in the shadows of her best friend's life. One afternoon, Chloe left a shift early and decided to drop off prenatal vitamins Emily had mentioned needing. As she turned the corner near the pharmacy, her eyes landed on a figure she instantly recognized, Daniel. He was across the street, standing near a modern apartment block, dressed a little too sharply for a casual weekday. A woman emerged from the building moments later, tall, blonde, confident. Chloe recognized her, 2. Amanda Gray, a hospital receptionist who'd once flirted openly with Daniel during Emily's checkups. Daniel leaned in, kissed Amanda quickly, and handed her a takeaway coffee. They laughed like it was a routine. Chloe stood frozen, pulse quickening with rage and disbelief. She didn't say anything then, but she waited until Daniel walked away before snapping a quick photo of them with her phone from a distance. That evening, she cornered him at Emily's house while Emily was upstairs resting. Her tone was calm but firm. "I saw you today. Near Southview Terrace. Amanda lives there, doesn't she?" Daniel's eyes narrowed, and in an instant, his expression flipped to offense. "Are you stalking me now, Chloe? Jesus. You've always had this weird obsession with me." His voice rose just enough to draw a boundary. "Stay out of our marriage." "I mean it." Chloe said nothing more, but her jaw set tight. She knew gaslighting when she heard it from abusers, manipulators, and cheaters alike. She didn't need a confession. From that day forward, she made it her mission to document every inconsistency, every lie, every moment that didn't add up. If Daniel was hiding something, and Chloe was certain he was, she would uncover the truth, one screenshot and timestamp at a time. The days were ticking down, and Emily's due date loomed closer with every flutter and kick inside her swollen belly. Her walk had slowed to a gentle waddle, and every movement required a deep breath and a soft groan. Still, her spirit was high, she was ready, anxious, and deeply in love with the idea of finally becoming a mother. She'd washed every tiny onesie, lined up baby bottles on the kitchen counter, and spent hours arranging and rearranging the nursery. Daniel, however, had been unusually distant. His work calls became longer, and he seemed preoccupied, checking emails late at night and whispering in corners of the house. One morning, as Emily gently massaged her aching back, he sat across the table with a casual tone and said, "By the way, I have to head out of town for a couple of days. Business thing. Just some meetings. I'll be back before the weekend." Emily blinked, confused. "Now? You're going away now?" Her hand instinctively rested on her belly. "I'm due any day, Daniel. What kind of business can't wait?" He smiled, waving her concern away. "It's just a quick trip, Em. I'll be back before anything happens. First babies are always late, right? You'll be fine." But something in his tone felt too rehearsed, too convenient. That evening, Emily shared the news with Chloe during their usual tea catch-up, and Chloe's face immediately darkened. "He's going where?" she asked sharply. Emily sighed. "Some conference, I guess. He says he'll be back soon." Chloe leaned forward, lowering her voice. "Emily, this isn't right. I know it's not my place, but you can't let him just walk out right now. What if you go into labor? You shouldn't be alone." Emily laughed nervously, trying to push away the fear tugging at her. "It's probably nothing. He's under pressure at work." But Chloe wasn't convinced. "Then why did I see him looking up golf resorts last week? Not hotel conference centers, golf resorts." Emily froze, her smile fading. "What?" Chloe nodded slowly. "He's lying to you." Later that night, Emily sat on the edge of the bed, folding tiny newborn socks into her hospital bag while Daniel stood in the closet, carefully packing his golf clubs. He zipped them into the travel case, wiped the shafts clean, and whistled a tune under his breath. "Don't worry, babe," he said, not even turning to face her. "I'll be back before you know it." Emily didn't respond. She placed a soft baby blanket into the bag and looked down at it for a long moment, wondering if she'd be doing all of this alone. As he rolled his suitcase toward the door, she watched silently, unsure whether the ache in her chest was from the baby shifting or her heart breaking. Emily jolted awake in the dim early morning light, her hand instinctively clutching her belly as a sharp, twisting pain shot through her core. She gasped, breathless, and then felt it, a sudden rush of warmth between her legs. Her water had broken. Panic flared in her chest as she sat up slowly, struggling to steady her breath. "Daniel," she whispered hoarsely, reaching for her phone on the nightstand. She tapped his name and waited, the ringing echoing in her ears. No answer. She tried again. Straight to voicemail. Her fingers trembled as another contraction tightened her stomach like a vice, stealing her breath. Come on, she hissed through clenched teeth, redialing. Still no answer. The pain was becoming rhythmic, urgent. Tears welled in her eyes as she realized he wasn't coming back in time. Without another thought, she called Chloe. It's time, Emily said, her voice cracking. He's not answering. I need help. Chloe didn't hesitate. I'm on my way, she said, already grabbing her keys. Within minutes, Chloe pulled into the driveway, her nurse instincts fully activated. She helped Emily into the car, murmuring soothing reassurances as Emily clutched the seatbelt and breathed through the next contraction. He said he'd be back before anything happened, Emily mumbled, pain and betrayal mixing in her voice. He lied, Chloe replied quietly, squeezing her hand. At the hospital, nurses rushed to admit her, wheeling Emily toward the maternity ward as Chloe stayed by her side. The questions began immediately, routine but piercing. Where's your husband? Will he be arriving soon? Emily looked away, her face pale and drawn, her lips quivering. He's playing golf, she whispered, the words barely audible but heavy with shame. The nurse hesitated, clearly unsure how to respond, and simply nodded. Emily turned her face into the pillow, tears slipping down her cheeks as the next contraction hit. All she could think about was the empty space beside her, the broken promise echoing louder than her own cries. Daniel was gone when she needed him most, chasing a game while she prepared to bring their child into the world without him. The fluorescent lights above Emily's hospital bed flickered softly as the monitors beeped in a steady rhythm beside her. The pain from the contractions had dulled slightly now that she was on medication, but the emotional storm inside her was still brewing. Chloe sat nearby, holding her hand and offering quiet support while nurses moved in and out of the room, preparing for the delivery. The door opened again, but this time it wasn't a nurse, it was Dr. Nathan Collins. Tall, composed, and known for his straightforward nature, he stepped inside with a clipboard in hand and a furrow in his brow. Emily, he began gently, walking to the side of her bed. I need to talk to you about something important. Emily sat up slightly, already sensing the shift in energy. Is the baby okay? She asked, alarmed. Dr. Nathan gave a quick nod. Yes, your baby is healthy and stable. This has nothing to do with the baby's current condition. Emily relaxed slightly, but her heart still thudded in her chest. Dr. Nathan glanced at Chloe, who stood up and moved closer to Emily protectively. We performed a standard compatibility test, he explained. It's routine. We do it in case you need an emergency transfusion during labor. It helps to ensure we can provide immediate care if there are complications. Emily nodded, still trying to understand where this was going. Daniel Thompson is listed as the father on your records, Dr. Nathan continued, tapping the chart. So we checked the compatibility markers accordingly. He paused for a moment, as if carefully choosing his next words. But his DNA doesn't match the baby's. Emily blinked, trying to process. I don't understand. What do you mean it doesn't match? Her voice cracked, full of confusion and fear. Chloe moved closer, gently rubbing her shoulder. I mean, Dr. Nathan said, keeping his voice low and professional, that based on the results, Daniel Thompson is not the biological father of your baby. The room fell into a stunned silence. Emily's mouth opened, but no words came. She shook her head, eyes wide. That's not possible. We've been trying for months. Her voice trailed off, a million memories flickering through her mind, doctor visits, ovulation tests, quiet nights filled with hope. Dr. Nathan softened his tone. It's not uncommon for unexpected results to come up during these screenings. I wanted to bring it to your attention directly before making it part of the permanent file. Emily felt the room spin slightly, her hands going to her belly instinctively. There must be some kind of mistake, she whispered. There has to be. But deep inside, buried beneath the panic, something stirred, an old, almost forgotten memory. one she had locked away. And suddenly, everything began to unravel. As Dr. Nathan's words echoed in her mind, "Daniel is not the biological father," Emily sat frozen, clutching her belly as if her hands could somehow hold together the crumbling foundation beneath her. Her pulse thundered in her ears, and suddenly, as if her body were trying to make sense of it all, her mind reached back in time. A memory surfaced, hazy at first, then growing clearer like a film reel playing behind her eyes. It had been nearly 3 years ago, long before Daniel came into her life. Back then, Emily was 30, single, and quietly grieving the loss of time. She had always wanted to be a mother, but after a string of heartbreaks and disappointments, she'd grown tired of waiting for the perfect man. While others celebrated engagements and weddings, she was researching clinics and statistics, fertility success rates, donor options, hormone cycles. She remembered the night she sat alone in her apartment, a mug of tea going cold beside her, as she stared at the web page for a private London fertility clinic. Her hands trembled as she filled out the online intake form. She'd gone through the preliminary testing, blood work, and counseling. And eventually, after weeks of thought, she selected a donor. He was anonymous, healthy, educated, with green eyes and a gentle smile in his profile. It had felt right. Hopeful, even. She started hormone injections, tracked her ovulation religiously, and braced herself for the emotional whirlwind of the IVF process. But before she could complete the final stage, before implantation, she met Daniel. It happened quickly. He was charming, persistent, and made her laugh. For the first time in a long while, she felt wanted, seen. She paused the IVF process, thinking she'd give love another chance. Over the following months, they started trying to conceive naturally. When she discovered she was pregnant, she believed wholeheartedly that it was Daniel's child. There had been no reason to doubt it, not until now. Sitting in the hospital bed, Emily's breath hitched as the realization crashed over her like cold water. She had completely forgotten about the fertility clinic. Had they gone through with the implantation before she officially canceled? Had the dates overlapped? The truth was tangled now, but one thing was becoming terrifyingly clear: the child inside her may have been conceived not in love, but in a sterile lab, by her choice, long before Daniel ever claimed her heart. And she never told him. The elevator doors slid open with a soft chime, and Daniel stepped into the maternity ward hallway, whistling a cheerful tune. In his hands, he held a bouquet of fresh white lilies and pink roses, wrapped in glossy paper with a congratulations balloon tied to the stems. His golf bag was still in the boot of his car, along with a half-empty bottle of champagne from the clubhouse. He walked with the easy confidence of a man who believed he could charm his way out of anything. Smiling, he approached the nurse's station. "Daniel Thompson," he said. "I'm here to see my wife, Emily. She should have delivered by now." The nurse behind the desk glanced up, her polite expression fading ever so slightly. "Room 208, she replied without emotion. Daniel nodded his thanks and walked down the corridor, adjusting his collar. He swung open the door without knocking. "I came as soon as I could," he said, flashing his practiced grin. "Had to drop everything to get here, you know." Emily was sitting up in bed, her arms wrapped protectively around the sleeping baby in her arms. Her hair was damp from sweat, her face pale but calm. There was no smile on her lips. No warmth in her eyes. She stared at him like he was a stranger. Behind her, Chloe stood near the window, arms crossed. The tension in the room thickened immediately. Daniel stepped closer, holding out the flowers like a peace offering. "For you. And our little princess." He chuckled nervously. "Looks like I missed the big moment, huh?" Emily didn't answer. She didn't even blink. Chloe, her voice flat and precise, stepped between them. "You may want to speak to Dr. Collins. Privately." Daniel frowned. "Why? What's going on?" Chloe didn't flinch. "Just go. Now." Something in her tone, cool, unwavering, cut through his smirk. Daniel's hand tightened around the flowers as he turned slowly toward the door, his confidence beginning to slip. Behind him, Emily looked down at the baby in her arms. Not a word spoken, but everything had already changed. He had come back too late, and the man she once needed by her side was now only an intruder in the life he was supposed to cherish. Dr. Nathan sat behind his desk, the faint hum of hospital activity filtering in through the closed door. Daniel stood across from him, fists clenched tightly at his sides, face flushed with anger and disbelief. The thick envelope containing the DNA test results lay unopened on the desk between them, a silent but heavy presence. After a long pause, Daniel's voice finally broke the silence, sharp and accusing. "She cheated on me," he spat. "There's no other explanation. She betrayed me while I was out of town." Dr. Nathan remained calm, his fingers folding gently over the paperwork. "That's not what the test says," he replied evenly. "You are not the biological father of the child Emily is carrying." Daniel's jaw tightened, his eyes narrowing. "What? That's impossible. I've been with her for months. We've been trying together. You're saying the baby isn't mine?" "It's not about who you've been with, but the biology," Dr. Nathan explained. "The DNA results are conclusive." He glanced at the door, then back to Daniel. "I'm telling you this because it's important for Emily's care, and for your understanding. The baby's biological father is not listed in your medical records." Daniel's breathing grew heavy. "She lied to me," he said through gritted teeth. "She cheated while I was away, and I was the fool." His anger boiled, and he paced the room restlessly. "Who else could it be? Who else is involved?" Emily's voice, soft but firm, suddenly cut through the tension as she stepped into the room. "Daniel, please listen." Her eyes were steady, her hands clasped tightly in front of her. "Before I met you, I was going through infertility treatments. I never told you because I was afraid you'd leave me if you knew." She took a shaky breath. "I went through IVF. The donor's sperm was used to help me conceive this baby. I thought you should know now." Daniel's face twisted with disbelief and rage. "You tricked me," he snarled. "This was never my child. You made me believe it was." Emily's eyes filled with tears, but her voice remained calm. "I wanted to be honest, Daniel. I'm sorry I waited so long." Daniel shook his head, his hands balling into fists. "I don't want to hear it. You destroyed everything." Without another word, he stormed out of the office, slamming the door behind him. Dr. Nathan sighed quietly, then turned to Emily. "You're stronger than you know," he said gently. "We'll get through this, one step at a time." Emily nodded, still holding on to the fragile hope that despite everything, she could protect the life growing inside her. Chloe sat across from Emily in the quiet living room, her face a mask of determination mixed with sadness. She pulled her phone from her pocket, unlocking it with a practiced swipe, and opened a folder labeled simply, "Truth." Emily's eyes widened as Chloe began scrolling through a series of photos, blurry at first, but then unmistakably clear. Daniel and Amanda, laughing intimately outside a downtown cafe, Daniel's hand resting casually on Amanda's waist as they strolled through the park, late-night texts filled with flirtatious emojis and promises to see you soon. Each image was accompanied by precise timestamps and location tags, proving beyond doubt that Daniel had been leading a double life. Emily's lips pressed tightly together, her breath shallow. She listened in silence as Chloe narrated the timeline, the dates when Daniel had claimed to be working late or traveling for business, but had actually been with Amanda. Chloe's voice didn't waver, though her eyes glistened with unshed tears. "I know this is hard, Em. But you deserve to know everything. I couldn't keep watching him lie to you." Emily nodded slowly, her fingers trembling as she clutched a mug of cold tea. The weight of betrayal settled over her like a heavy fog, yet within that darkness was a strange clarity. The excuses, the lies, the empty promises, they all made sense now. Daniel wasn't the man she thought he was. Just then, the front door creaked open, and Daniel stepped into the room, the familiar scent of his cologne trailing behind him. His confident smile faltered the moment he saw the serious expressions on both women's faces. "What's going on?" he asked, trying to mask the sudden tension. Chloe didn't hesitate. She held up her phone, the screen displaying one of the most damning photos, a candid shot of Daniel and Amanda sharing a tender moment. "Explain this," she said quietly but firmly. Daniel's face flushed, his eyes darting between Emily and Chloe. For a heartbeat, silence hung thick. Then, his defenses crumbled just enough to reveal a flicker of guilt. "It's not what it looks like," he stammered. Emily's voice cut through sharply, steady and cold. "Don't. Just don't." Daniel swallowed hard, realizing the charade was over. Chloe's evidence had dismantled the walls he'd built around his lies. The truth, once hidden in shadows, now stood boldly between them. No amount of excuses could change the photos, the messages, or the betrayal they revealed. As Emily rose from her chair, her eyes met Daniel's one last time, no longer with love, but with the quiet strength of someone who had finally awakened. Chloe stepped beside her, a steady pillar of support. Together, they faced Daniel, the man who had chosen deception over loyalty, and made it clear, the life they once had was over. The sharp knock at the door shattered the fragile calm that had settled over Emily's home. Chloe opened it cautiously to reveal Amanda standing there, arms crossed, her expression a complicated mix of defiance and vulnerability. She stepped inside without waiting for an invitation, her heels clicking on the hardwood floor as she moved toward the living room where Emily sat, clutching a blanket around her shoulders. "I need to talk to you," Amanda said, her voice steady but with an edge of desperation. "It's about Daniel." Emily looked up, weary and guarded, as Amanda dropped a small envelope onto the coffee table. "I'm pregnant," Amanda declared bluntly. "His baby." The words hit Emily like a thunderclap. Her eyes filled with tears she'd been holding back for weeks. The fight within her dissolved, and for a moment, all she could do was breathe. Finally, her voice cracked but carried unmistakable finality. "Take him. Both of you deserve each other." Amanda blinked, surprised by Emily's response. "Wait, you're not angry?" Emily shook her head, exhaustion lining her features. "I'm done fighting over someone who didn't fight for me." But then Amanda's own facade faltered. "You know," she admitted quietly, "he lied to me too. Promised he'd leave you. Said I was the only one. I believed him." She looked down, swallowing hard. "I don't want him anymore." For the first time, the two women, bound by betrayal yet apart in their pain, shared a fragile understanding. Neither wanted Daniel's love, only peace. Amanda turned to leave, glancing once at Emily. "I hope you find it." As the door closed behind her, Emily sat back, a deep sigh escaping her lips. The tangled mess of lies had reached a new, painful chapter, but somehow, she felt the first stirrings of freedom. News traveled fast. Daniel's once respected reputation unraveled just as quickly as the truth came out. Within days, his company called him into a meeting and handed down the verdict: he was fired. The scandal wasn't something they could overlook. His name, once synonymous with professionalism and success, was now linked to betrayal and deceit. Whispers followed him through empty hallways, and former colleagues avoided eye contact. The world he had built on charm and lies was crumbling. Amanda, too, had reached her breaking point. After weeks of hurt and false promises, she packed her bags and left without a word. No calls, no explanations, just silence. Daniel's texts and desperate pleas went unanswered, echoing into a void he no longer controlled. Realizing he'd lost everything, Daniel turned back to Emily, hoping to mend what he had shattered. "I'll raise the baby," he said, voice trembling but determined. "I made mistakes, but I want to be there. For both of you." Emily looked at him, her eyes cold but steady. "You left us for golf," she replied, her words sharp like a knife. "When I needed you most, you chose a game over your family. You don't get to come back now." Daniel opened his mouth to protest, but she shook her head. "No more lies. No more chances. With that, Emily turned away, holding her child close. The chapter with Daniel was over. She would write the next pages herself, strong, independent, and unbroken. The soft glow of fairy lights twinkled above the backyard, casting a warm, golden haze over the gathering of friends and family. Laughter filled the air, mingling with the gentle babble of children and the clinking of glasses. At the center of it all was Emily, her eyes sparkling with a happiness that hadn't been there a year ago. She wore a simple yet elegant dress, her hair cascading in loose waves, and a radiant smile that lit up the entire space. Today was her daughter's first birthday, a milestone that marked not just a year of motherhood, but a year of resilience, growth, and newfound strength. The little girl sat on a blanket surrounded by colorful balloons and toys, giggling as she clumsily tried to blow out the candles on a homemade cake. Emily's heart swelled with pride as she watched her daughter take tentative steps toward her, arms reaching out for support. "You're doing amazing, baby," Emily whispered, tears glistening in her eyes. She had fought so hard to get here, from the heartbreak of betrayal to the overwhelming challenges of raising a child on her own. But she had never once lost hope. Over the past year, Emily had launched a popular blog dedicated to single mothers, sharing her journey with honesty and compassion. Her words resonated with thousands of women who felt seen and understood through her stories. The blog was more than a platform, it was a community, a place of strength where she poured her heart and soul. Among the guests were Chloe and Dr. Nathan, now a couple, who had become pillars of support in Emily's life. They smiled as they chatted near the garden table, their warmth and kindness a testament to the friendships forged in the hardest of times. Unnoticed by anyone, Daniel stood near the edge of the yard, watching from a distance. His face was a mixture of regret and helplessness as he observed the joy he had once been part of but could no longer claim. The years ahead held no promises for him here. But for Emily, the future was bright and uncharted, a story she would write on her own terms, filled with love, courage, and the unbreakable bond between mother and child. My dearest little one. As you read this letter, you will be 18, on the cusp of your own journey into adulthood, with your whole life stretching ahead like an open sky. I hope you are surrounded by love, laughter, and the kind of happiness I always dreamed you would know. There are things I want to share with you, truths about how you came to be, and lessons about love and life that I've learned along the way. First, I want you to know why I chose a path that might seem unusual or complicated. Before I met your father, I had hoped for a family, just like many young women do. But after years of waiting and wishing, I realized that sometimes life doesn't follow the storybook version we imagine. I turned to IVF, in vitro fertilization, not because I was desperate or broken, but because I believed in creating hope with my own hands. It was a choice made with courage and faith that I could bring a life into this world, even if it meant walking a path different from what I'd planned. You are a miracle born of love, science, and endless hope, a beautiful testament to resilience. You might wonder why I never told your father the full truth, or why things between us didn't work out as we once dreamed. Love, my darling, is a complicated thing. Sometimes, it is fierce and forever, and sometimes it fades or shifts into something unrecognizable. The person who promised to stand by me, to hold my hand through every late-night fear and every joyful moment, chose a different path. He left, not because of anything you did, or anything I lacked, but because love is not always enough. That truth was hard to face, but it taught me that our worth is never defined by another's choices. I want you to understand something very important. Absence isn't always loss. Though your father wasn't there for your first cries or your first steps, you have never been alone. You have a family that loves you fiercely, friends who became family, and a mother who would move mountains to protect you. Life gave us challenges, yes, but it also gave us strength. The love we share is unshakable and real. It is not measured by who shows up, but by who stays when it matters most. One day, when you're ready, I hope you'll look back on our story with kindness and compassion, not just for me, but for yourself. You were born from hope, and you are worthy of every dream you hold. Remember that the family we build is ours to define. You are not limited by the past, but empowered by the love that surrounds you now. Your father left for a game, one that he chose over us, but you became my entire world. And my love, is a forever kind of love. With all my heart. Mom.